Hey everybody, it's me, Dan. I'm coming to you from a different spot in my home studio today with a very different setup. I've been thinking about everybody who's at home, maybe with some extra time that you haven't had before, trying to play guitar, get some recording done, maybe practice or record while everyone's asleep or you're in your apartment, you can't disturb the neighbors. And it's made me think about low volume ways to get really good sounds. And I thought it might be helpful if I showed how I approach a new piece of software and how I would dial that in to get an inspiring sound, even just to play with headphones. So I'm over here in one corner of my studio. You can see my messy junk table back there where all the stuff lands, and it's just real life around here. Today I've got Ableton Live open, and I'm going to show you how I dial in a plugin from Neural DSP, the Granophyre plugin. It's something I just downloaded a day or two ago to check out. And I'll just kind of show you my approach to it. I figured I'd kind of just jump in. One note about what I'm using: I've got my MacBook Pro 15-inch computer here. I've got my old trusty Apogee Duet that I've had forever and still functions and sounds just fine. I'm actually even recording my vocal mic here into the computer for this video, so it's doing double duty, capturing microphone audio, and also my guitar is going to be plugged straight into it. And something I just wanted to mention is, if you're setting up at home for the first time, it's a great idea to think about the ergonomics of how you work. This is a really portable little setup. I've got my pedals on the floor over here, and in general, when I do set up like this, so if I'm recording remotely, or even my larger setup is a reflection of this, I'll set it up so I can just turn to the side to work my pedals, and then I'm able to just reach over with my right hand to operate the computer. It keeps the headstock away from the computer screen, and it's a pretty comfortable way of working. So that's kind of my basic flow and setup, and it's worth mentioning because you want to think about the ergonomics of your setup, because anything that increases the amount of friction between you and actually getting to work is detrimental. You don't want that. Oftentimes, you don't have a ton of time to mess around or get distracted. So thinking about your setup is a really great idea. Now, moving on to checking out this plugin and setting up a cool sound. I've got my headphones. First of all, if you don't have a decent set of headphones, I would recommend that you invest in some if you're gonna be playing and recording much at home. These are some really nice Grado RS1s. I enjoy them because I do mixing and kind of critical listening, and I'm an audio nerd. But there's much less expensive headphones. My personal favorite all-around headphone is the Beyerdynamic DT770. Just a great, comfortable, fairly neutral sounding headphone that I could wear for all day. But I'm wearing my nice mix headphones here. As I said before, I got my Ronin guitar. I'm going through a bunch of pedals on the floor that are all off currently, and I'm plugged straight into the Apogee Duet. One thing to note is that gain staging with an audio interface is very different than being plugged into a guitar amp. With a tube guitar amp, you can have a boost or a fuzz pedal that is just smashing the front end of the amp, and that makes for a really cool sound. All of that saturation and compression from the tubes and the transformers is very inspiring. Audio interfaces are not really designed to operate the same way. If you go too hot on the input of an audio interface, it's going to sound pretty crummy. You're going to hear some solid state and digital distortion. You don't want that. So you'll have to be a little conservative with your volume settings, your input settings on your interface, especially if you're using pedals. There just might be some adjusting that has to go on there. So the reason I downloaded this particular Neural DSP plugin is that I liked the look of it. This is true. I was looking at the stuff on their website, which is definitely geared towards the progressive metal and kind of technical guitar crowd. high gain, really responsive, but the look of this amp intrigued me because it looked a little bit like some of the Fryette amps that I'm familiar with, the Fryette Sig X and the Deliverance series. So I thought it might have some things in common with those amps. So I've just instantiated the first plug-in of this, and this is what the sound is with first thing when it comes up. Well, that's pretty crushing right there. Down here at the bottom, it looks like we have a selection of different power amp tubes. You got that was 6L6. This is EL34. And KT66. That's way more gain than I would probably ever use for most of my stuff. I mean, certain things require that sound, and this is a really cool version of that. And frankly, for me, getting those like really high gain, intense, heavy rock or metal sounds, I don't really get those sounds with a microphone at home. I tend to lean more towards getting those sounds direct, either with my Fryette GPDI, which is a small amp that I can record direct with, or with a plug-in, because you tend to need a lot of volume and really a room that can handle that amount of sound, or a really well isolated room. I don't really have that at home, so getting those high gain sounds with a plug-in is really great. But let's do this. I'm going to take the gain way down here. I'm also going to turn the gate all the way off. Let's go to low gain. Bring this level up a little bit. Maybe master up. It's a little crunchy. Okay. More depth. What's this for? Oh, that's interesting. You can really hear the difference in the different tube settings at this lower gain setting. KT66 is a little harsh. EL34 is a little more bold in the upper mids. And 6L6 is a little rounder, which I guess that's kind of what you would expect. So I'm turning up the depth here. I'm going to turn down the detail a little bit and add a little more bass and mids. This is kind of like a sound that I would try to dial in just for playing and experimenting. Yeah, that's already way closer to something that I would use at home. It's pretty responsive. It sounds nice. Okay, over here we have the cab emulation section. So we've got a dynamic 57 microphone. So you can move that around and dial in some different sounds. What about you know, I really like the sound actually of an SM7B, and it looks like they have that here. A little bigger on the bottom, a little more textured in the mids. And then let's add a ribbon microphone. Why don't we? I like this looks like it's a version of the M160. Who made that? I think that's a biodynamic mic, famous for being the overhead or room microphones on When the Levee Breaks, the drum sound. So let's turn this on. Okay, I'm getting a little funky distortion there, which is probably from my buffer setting. This is something that you have to deal with when you're recording direct, is having enough memory in order to run these plugins live with a low enough buffer setting. The buffer setting is basically how long it takes for audio to travel through your computer. If it gets too high, you start to get latency, which can be a little annoying. So that's pretty cool. I'm digging that, adding in the second microphone. And let's see, what else can we do here? This is a nice basic sound. You can experiment for days with this, but what I tend to run into with plugins like this is that it is the replication of a microphone usually right up on the grill of the cab. So the next thing that I would do with a sound like this is start looking for some sort of ambience that I would want to bring into it. So I'm going to grab the Valhalla Shimmer plugin, another great plugin. This is kind of a deep Brian Eno-esque kind of eventide type reverb. I like to run it in big stereo. Dual pitch mode is fun, and the dark setting. I've turned the mix all the way up because I've put it on the first effect send here. And you can hear this plugin is kind of like the guitar version of just setting a brick on the sustain pedal of a piano. I like that. That's beautiful. If you turn up the feedback on this plugin, you get more regeneration of the pitch effect, which is cool too. I like playing into a little bit of space because I don't like that sense of the plugin being like right here, the sound being right there. So now I'm coming back here. I'm wondering what's going on EQ-wise. I wouldn't mind a little more low end, just for my personal amusement. I might not dial in quite this much if I were doing this in a track, but since I'm listening on its own. Pretty happy with that as just a starting place and something to mess around and play with. I might dial in a little more low end just for my personal amusement. So I think a key thing for me is having a little bit of ambience to play into. You could do the same thing with just the reverb plugin in Ableton Live. You could use a delay. I like to have a little something going on there, especially when I'm just playing and improvising. Could totally use this. So in summary, not much in the way of hardware. The computer is obviously the most expensive thing going on here. We've got the duet. I've got some pedals I'm not even using right now. And this is a $120 plugin, I think. With also, I will add the Valhalla Shimmer plugin is less than that. It's like an $80 plugin, a total steal. So with that in mind, this is not an expensive rig. It's simple. It's not like something like Guitar Rig 5, which is what I used to use, that has limitless options. This is pretty much like a rig that you would use at home. And I dig it. I think it sounds really good. And I would use this on recordings if I wasn't able to mic up any up here in my space. So hopefully this has been helpful. You've seen how to set up a decent sound in your DAW and use a plugin, create a little ambience, dial things in. If you have any questions, as always, you can comment in the comments down below. You can email me at hello@danphelps.com or find me on any of the social platforms. And, you know, if you like this video, please subscribe. Click below and also click the little bell icon so that you get notified when I post new videos. I've been Dan Phelps, have been and will continue to be, and I hope that you enjoy this video. I'll check you soon. Bye.